Welcome to the 20th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Rudell of the Altoona Mirror and Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com. Between them, they've covered Penn State football for 70 years. The NitWits are hosted by WTAJ Sports Director Alex Colley, and each week we welcome a former Nittany Lion as our special guest analyst. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State! By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Welcome to another edition of the NitWits as we break down Penn State's 33-14 win over Pitt. To do that, we have the Altoona Mirror's Neil Rudell, FightOnState.com's Mark Brennan, and once a captain, always a captain, Mike Irwin joining us in the chair this week.
Thank you. It's great to be here, Alex.
Welcome back.
And I tell you, you guys are doing a great job. I've watched every show, and the guests have been fantastic, you know, with Joe Nastasi and Bill Kontz last week. So my hat's off to you guys for doing a good show.
Thank you, Mike, but it's great to have you back.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here.
In the chair with the pen.
With the pen. You get out of line, I'll be pointing at somebody.
Well, Penn State is 2-0 after the win, so what do we take away from Saturday's victory over their in-state foe?
Well, I would start with their defense. Even though Pitt was on the field a lot, and I thought Pitt had a pretty good offensive game plan to try to keep Penn State off the field and their stars. But Penn State was really tough when they had to be in the red zone. Pitt, I think, had 20 plays inside the Penn State 25 and only scored one touchdown. So I have a shout out to the defense.
Yeah, and the other thing I liked about the defense, even though there were some moments in that game with those shovel passes that they couldn't seem to adjust, and Pitt did move the ball up and down the field, again, they played a ton of kids. So when the game, not that it was close at the end, but when they had to make a couple plays to keep Pitt from scoring, they're barreling through there, sacking them. And this is a defense that was on the field for 84 plays. And to be able to be that fresh and making those types of plays late in the game, I think that bodes really well for later in the season when they're actually in close games and need the defense to step up.
I think it was a good win over a quality opponent. I think a lot of people underestimate how good Pitt was, or how good Pitt is, because of their first game against Youngstown State, just winning in overtime. But if you look at their lineup, I mean, they had Quadri Henderson as an All-American candidate, and Penn State shut him down. I mean, and the other guy, the running back, Ollison, is a quality back. And then they had a lot of graduate transfers this year to reload that lineup. And offensively, they're really good. And I think they executed their game plan really well.
Well, special teams, I mean, I think that's the other thing you have to take a look at. You know, both offense and defense had their ups and downs in that game. And the way I kind of viewed it is special teams, to me, I think had Penn State special teams not played the way they did, I think Pitt had an opportunity to get back in that game if they were able to pop some special teams plays. The way that the offense and defense just weren't real stable for Penn State. But I'll tell you that this is where we've talked about it before. They're out of the sanctions era now. They have a full complement of scholarships. And as Franklin said after the game, they have a two deep on these coverage teams. They have really good athletes flying down the field. And you pair that, especially with a punter like Blake Gillikin, they completely neutralized Pitt's return game, which we know how good that return game could be. We saw it last year.
That's what I was just going to say. If you roll it back to last year, I mean, Henderson beat us up big time
Yeah,
last year.
yeah.
And they stopped him several times inside the 25. That's kind of the barometer if you kick it into the end zone. But I bet their average starting field position was somewhere around the 18. They
Yeah.
really, and I think he got 0 yards of Henderson, who's a really good athlete.
Yeah, and you talk about staying fresh. Pitt dominated time of possession, 22 minutes in the first half. It's practically unheard of. Over on the other side of the ball, it took Penn State a while. They had some really good splash plays when they needed them. The Jasicki touchdown early was very well executed and matching up Barkley in the second half. They obviously made more of a conscious effort to get the ball to Barkley on the edge and then freed him up in space against the linebacker was, I thought, the biggest play of the game.
Well, and that's the thing with this Penn State offense is even on a day when it's quote unquote struggling, they have the sort of playmakers where they're going to be able to pop things big. And clearly we saw it with Barkley. That was a unique play. I don't recall ever seeing them run that play from that far down the field. They've done that in the red zone before, but to do it the way they did it, that's what makes it so difficult if you're the opposing team. You could be playing relatively well. I think Penn State only had, 312 yards of total offense?
52 plays.
Right, but still, they're going to get you, every now and then, whether it's McSorley breaking loose for a 37-yard run, Gesicki making a couple touchdowns, Barkley popping some big things. The big playability is what makes the offense special.
Yeah, I think McSorley got a slow start. I mean, I guess he was a little nervous, and because of the game they had last year, losing to Pitt. It was a big game for Penn State to come back and beat this Pitt team. I mean, because of last year's situation that came out of Pittsburgh. So McSorley, I think, and to give credit to Pitt's defensive backs, they did a pretty good job. Did give McSorley a lot of open shots at some of the receivers.
He wasn't as accurate as he has been and needs to be. He had some people open. It was a little windy, I thought, early, and I think that may have affected it. But he had some guys open that he just wasn't really as precise.
Well, uncharacteristic for him, too.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in the last, 8, 10, however many games. But, again, the sign of a good offense, the quarterback is not on top of his game in the first half, and they're still able to kind of roll. I mean, did anybody get the sense after that early touchdown that Penn State was ever in any danger of losing that game? I know I didn't. I didn't think, once they got up, it's like, boy, I just never got the sense that Pitt was going to have the opportunity to get back and make it really, really interesting.
Yeah, I agree, because I think, Penn State, I mean, special teams that Mark alluded to earlier has been great. I mean, DeAndre Tompkins running some balls back. I mean, first game he ran one back for a score, but he caught some in traffic and took off on him. And
It's
I thought
like you
he's
back
gonna
there,
be-
Mike.
Yeah, I ran a few back in my day. Then they put Barkley in. We'll get to that later, I'm sure.
We will. We're going to take our first time out, but when we return, there's always room for improvement. We're going to talk about where the Nittany Lions are looking at this week in practice. We'll be right back.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name.
We now return to the Nitwits. A roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Welcome back. Saturday was a win, but it was hardly perfect. What areas do the Nittany Lions need to address after rewatching the Pitt Penn State game film?
Is it too early to get into non-conference scheduling for next week? Sorry. No, I mean, I think, some of the things that even we saw in the first game, I don't think the tackling was as good as you would expect from, a team that's number 4 in the nation. They definitely have to tighten that up. And I was a little bit surprised that Pitt was able to use that shovel or shuttle, whatever you call it, over and over and over and over. The good thing for Penn State is that they were able to see that and get that on film and learn in a win. But that's the sort of thing where, in terms of in-game adjustments, I was a little surprised Penn State wasn't able to adjust and address that.
They did adjust to the jet sweep. I mean, last year Pitt was very successful running that jet sweep, but we still haven't stopped the shovel pass. I mean, they ran it, I forget, about 4 or 5 times in a row, and we weren't adjusting. And then, like Mark said, I think poor tackling and the interior of the line, the middle linebacker should be stopping that jet sweep. Maybe we'll put that into our play and let Barkley do the jet sweep. I think that would be a great move.
The only thing he's
Get
not
him
doing.
the ball where he's moving forward rather than standing still.
I think, and this goes to tackling and getting off the field on defense. So when you count third downs and fourth downs, there were 8 sustained possessions. Pitt was 3 or 4 on fourth down, and a couple were late. And I think they converted 5 third downs. So that allowed Pitt to really keep the ball. And it may speak a little bit to the linebacking play. I think Bowen's off to a pretty good start. But you said it last week, and I think it's a good point. I'm not sure they have a great player on defense. They really got a good lift from Miller, who went out of the Akron game and came right back. And Apke, I thought, played a good game yesterday. But I'm not sure they have that emerging superstar yet on defense.
Well, Marcus Allen, I have to give him. He made one of the great plays I've seen. I mean, that safety was, and I know it wasn't. That wasn't at a moment, like Ohio State last year where it was a game changer or anything, but that was terrific. But the other thing is, listen, you have a guy like Grant Haley who's been around forever, immediately sets the tone. Maybe you don't need a first-round NFL draft pick when you're as deep as this team is.
I guess I meant in the front 7, to be fair, because Allen has established himself and Haley has.
Yeah, because the defensive backs have played pretty well.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And the front 7, there's so many people going in and out, they're not getting adjusted. And I'm sure Brent Pry will come up with some solution to some of those mistakes they made after they go back and look at the film and see the shovel pass being successful and how they're going to stop that. And so, it's an ongoing learning experience. And going from, like Mark is alluding to, going from Akron to Pitt, that's a big step. And so I think we learned a lot by having, Pitt come in here to town.
I think they still have kept their playbook reasonably in check as far as, yesterday it was 14-0 early, and, last year it seemed that maybe they'd be throwing it deep. Blacknall has not been a factor yet, and I'm kind of curious there because he was the key player in the Big Ten title game. And, it just seemed like maybe they would go up top a couple times, 14-0 lead, go up 21-0, and maybe it takes a little different shape.
Well, maybe they dial that back, though, because they realized McSorley wasn't as sharp as he usually is. I mean, he had a couple opportunities earlier in the game. The other thing I would say, though, when you talk about dialing back to playbook, defensively, I love what Pry's doing, blitzing all these guys. I mean, we see some of it at practice, but when you see Grant Haley, again, arguably the smallest guy on the field, zipping up there through the middle and sacking the guy. That was just really fun to watch. And they're sending linebackers. So, again, when we look at these things and we break them down, we have to look at some of the negatives. But overall, I mean, we definitely are nitpicking. This is a fun team to watch offensively and defensively.
One of the big nitpicks this season has been Saquon Barkley returning kicks. What's been your reaction to that?
I'm 100% for it. I mean, I don't think I'd have him in every game. But, I mean, we're up 14-3 or 14-6 and having Barkley in there. I mean, I think he gives us the best opportunity to score. And if he's going to get hurt, that could happen, during the game, not necessarily running a kickoff back. I don't know what the chances are of getting hurt running a kickoff back. But I would think he's the best return man we have. Now, I think the other guys would be capable, like a Tompkins getting in there. He could run that back too.
It's higher risk, higher reward. James Franklin talks a lot about chemistry, team morale, and stuff. And when you're running the quarterback as often as you do, it limits the wide receiver, and you want to get the ball to your great tight end for sure and Gesicki. So I would like to see maybe give Sanders another shot. I realize he's having some fumbles situation. Tompkins has been so good that he might be an option back there. Polk. I don't like it with Barkley back there.
Yeah, I'm with you too. I mean, I've never coached a game in my life, but it's one thing I think you could look at and make a reasonable argument that they have enough very good athletes on that team. Now, listen, I was the guy who was pumping up Miles Sanders, and then his first touch, he fumbles. And listen, if he's doing that in a game, you have to wonder if that's happening in practice. But, if it's not Tompkins, you have Polk, you have other guys who are more than capable of going back there.
But
get them involved, Mike.
If you're in a critical situation and you're playing in Ohio State or a Michigan or someone for the Big Ten championship, would you want Barkley running the ball or would you want Miles Sanders running the ball? I mean, I don't know. There's the decision
that's a fair question. In the Rose Bowl, they stuck him back there when they really had to have him. Okay, but they made a decision they were going to have Barkley return the first kickoff they received against Akron. Well, it turned out it was 35-0. So just
Well, yeah,
because that's
I agree with that. If it's 35
okay, just
nothing,
because
let's not
that's
get them
the
even
script,
around.
can you move off the script?
Well, and the other thing I would say is there was at least one kick in that game where Barkley should have come up and caught it. And he cannot be putting as much focus into that preparation as some of the more specialized players are. So I would make that argument. Listen, you could go back, Mike, and say, you know, in '94, could Kajana Carter have been returning kicks? And in the meantime, in the Rose Bowl, Ambrose Fletcher breaks off a big one that really helped propel Penn State's momentum. So I think you can have specialists when you have the sort of athletes that they have behind them. This isn't, you're not trotting out a walk-on back there. You're trotting out.
But I'm just saying, like returning a kick, you want the guy that's going to get to that seam the quickest of anybody to run it back. And I think Barkley is probably the quickest guy on the team. I mean, the other guys are a step behind him, and I mean, he's elusive. I mean, he gives you the best opportunity to run one back.
It's a high risk, high reward.
I'm not sure it's that high risk,
Don't
is
you?
what I'm
Okay.
saying. I mean, I hate to see Barkley get back, and if he gets hurt, now you guys will be all over me.
This segment going over is high risk.
I have a feeling we'll be talking about this later in the season too. But when we return with all the big plays and stats, it's a post-game quote that is stealing some headlines. We'll talk about that when the NitWits returns.
The NitWits are brought to you by Monarch Cleaners for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solaney Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solaney provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State. By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886.
We now return to the NitWits. A roundtable discussion of Penn State football.
Welcome back. A post-game comment from James Franklin has made its rounds. In case you missed it, here's the one we're going to be talking about.
That's what this was for us, guys. I know last year for their win it was like the Super Bowl, but for us this was just like beating Akron. You can interpret it however you want. I've been saying for 2 years that each win is like the Super Bowl for us. So you can interpret however you want. Last week, we beat Akron, and it was a great win. This win, we beat Pittsburgh, and it was a great win. This win is no more significant for us than last week.
Follows a similar tone that we've heard from Coach Franklin, but what's been your reaction to the reaction of this?
Well, I don't think you need to make the comment, personally. You look at what has happened the last 2 years with this game. They had the biggest crowd that they've ever had for a football game in Pittsburgh, Steelers or Pitt last year. Here you had the biggest crowd you've had in 8 years. It's a special game. I don't think it has been a special game to James Franklin, and that bothers me. But I will say that I think he has done a good job not looking past opponents, at least externally. And we had seen that in the past. But I just don't think he's paid enough tribute to the history of this series. I just don't.
I love the comment. I mean, first of all, the fact that he's like, you could interpret it however you want. I've been saying this for 3 years. He hasn't been saying Pitt celebrated like it was a Super Bowl. But you know what? That's the thing. He can give these subtle jabs, and I'm completely fine with it because the way the Pitt fans and players and everybody tweeted and reacted after that game last year, they probably deserve to be jabbed a little bit, and to do it in a subtle way, not going crazy after the game. Everybody was very classy after the game. I'm completely fine with that. And for the fact that he doesn't give the game the respect, if you give this game, I think he's right. If you put more value in this game, how much value do you put in Ohio State? How much value do you put in Michigan? I mean, you can't put more value in one game over the other, in my view. Look at Neil's ready to go. He wants to tear my head off.
Well, I don't think Pitt has a big rivalry right now, and Penn State is the big rival. So it is a big game to Pitt to beat a Penn State. Now, we have other games on our schedule that might be as important going forward. I mean, an Ohio State or a Michigan, because we're out there to win our conference. But I mean, I think Pitt is a big game for both schools, and I want it to continue. I know we might get into that later.
Right.
But,
Ohio State is a bigger game for Penn State, but I think Pitt is a very meaningful game, and I don't think, it started last year. He just wanted to separate the idea that it was a rival. This game has been a rivalry and will be when it's played. You see that with the fans that attend the game. They enjoy it.
Did he or did he not throw a little bit of a log on the fire, though, with his comment about they celebrated it like it was a Super Bowl last year? You're saying he did. That was his little jab. That was his little part of this game, and I was completely fine with it because they deserved it.
When you do that, you could see where it could be offensive. He's talking about
what does
them.
He care?
He's talking about a Super Bowl every week. So the Super Bowl this week is Georgia State.
Did you see what was tweeted and said last year by people on the staff, on the team at Pitt? I mean, and for him to come out with a little jab like that, I mean, that's his way of playing the game more subtly. I was completely fine with it.
How much do you want to see this extended after the current contract for a series?
I mean, I think it is a good game, and I like to see it continue. I mean, I think a lot of people, especially Western Pennsylvania, maybe from Altoona to Pittsburgh, it's a big game because it's probably the closest, big-time football school that's, to our location. It's a regional game, and I think I like it to continue. I mean, I certainly would rather see them play Pitt than Georgia State or Youngstown State or some of those things.
You talk about it doesn't mean any more than Akron, but you're calling a timeout with 3:30 left, and Pitt's trying to run out the clock. Okay, and then Pitt gets a first down, and your defense is on the field and almost allows a touchdown, and you let
Who asked
Pitt
about that after the
game?
game?
I think it's true.
He's making canonizing Pitt football team. He's making them a saint. You think Pitt's a saint team over there?
No, I mean,
realistically speaking,
Narduzzi
wouldn't say anything positive.
No, I mean Narduzzi threw out that it's not like Penn State was playing, or not like Pitt was playing William and Mary. I don't know why he said that.
He's ripping poor William and Mary.
Yeah, that's what they have to do with
Franklin wouldn't do that. Listen, realistically, they'll never be able to play Pitt every year, especially now with the 9-game Big Ten schedule. It's just going to be impossible to do. They're already scheduled out through 2020, whatever, and it's just, you can't do it. And you can't equate it with, I would rather play Pitt than Georgia State or Youngstown State. That's not the game that Pitt's replacing. That they would be replacing the Virginia Tech or the Auburn. So do you want to play Auburn or do you want to play?
Are you saying you'd rather have them play a Georgia State?
I'm saying I'd rather have them be able to play Virginia Tech and Auburn.
We'll do it. I like to say Pitt. I like to continue the series.
All right. Well, we've got to move on to Georgia State. We're going to have those predictions coming up when the Nitwits returns.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday.
Prediction time. How do we see Penn State, Georgia State shaking out?
Well, Georgia State's coming here for the first time playing Penn State. I want to say Penn State 60, Georgia State 0.
Whoa, I'll say 52-3. Biggest margin in Super Bowl history.
I'll go 64-4, just some crazy things happening, maybe a couple of safeties.
All right, 55-3 was the one I had coming in. I'm going to go with 55-3. Mark Brennan, we didn't get to give him the proper shout out last week for getting the ball, so he went ahead and won it again. He's now got a pretty good lead there for Nitwit of the Year. All right, thank you so much for watching. Hope you see us back here next week, and have a great one.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, Raymond James, an independent firm, and a firm foundation for your financial future. By Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Courtesy Motor Sales of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By The Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By Health South, your rehab choice. Health South Altoona, ask for us by name. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your dry cleaning, uniform, and mat rentals. By Reed and Solani Orthodontics. Doctors Reed and Solani provide orthodontics for children and adults. By W.S. Lee & Sons, your local food distributor. Go Penn State! By Allegheny Street Cigar. Allegheny Street Cigar, Blair County's only cigar lounge. By McAleer's Plumbing, specializing in plumbing, heating, and air conditioning, serving our community since 1886. By Lakeview Sheds and Vinyl in East Freedom. You can buy off our lot or we can customize your dream shed. By Shields Awards and the Sports Shop. We have a fantastic selection of awards, apparel, and memorabilia at great prices. By EasyToUse.com, your Yellow Pages connection in print and online. By FightOnState.com, as close as you can get to Penn State football without putting on a helmet. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State Game Day every Friday and Penn State Extra every Sunday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.